Hello and welcome back to the channel for another Doctor Who video. Today we're going to be turning our attention to Big Finish and the really rather exciting news that both Jo Martin and Sacha Dhawan, so the Fugitive Doctor and the current Master, have both signed up to do Big Finish and to have their own spin-off series with Big Finish, which is incredibly exciting, slightly unprecedented in the sense that usually the trend has been that while our current era is ongoing on TV, while it is the incumbent era, like the Whittaker Chibnall era is at the moment, those characters are not covered by Big Finish's license until that era has ended. Obviously, the current era is coming to an end, so there is a bit of overlap there, and it's not entirely clear whether these box sets are going to be released, before the Centenary Special airs or afterwards. But either way, this is coming very hot off the heels of those characters both being introduced in the TV series. Basically since those two characters appeared on TV for the first time, people have been crying out for them to have their own spin-off series, either on TV or Big Finish or whatever. And so the fact that this has now happened, it's not totally unexpected. I think it's just happened a lot sooner than a lot of people would have expected to happen. But off the back of that, I thought that it would be quite fun to speculate about what other 13th Doctor era spin-offs we might be getting, in the near future or the distant future or in 20 years' time or just whenever. Because in the article that confirmed this news, in the announcement article, there was a line that said something along the lines of, these are just the first spin-off series to come from the 13th Doctor's era, with more to be announced in due course. So I thought it would be fun to go back through every 13th Doctor era episode and look at all of the possibilities for spin-offs in each of those episodes, basically in terms of the characters or the settings or the worlds or just whatever. So firstly we have The Woman Who Fell to Earth. There aren't any sort of major characters that stick out here, I have to say, but I think you could do a box set based around some of these minor characters like Rahul, the guy whose sister goes missing, and delve into the backstory of that a bit more. Or like Graham's bus driver mates, or Salad Man before he met his untimely demise. Next we have the Ghost Monument. Now I think with this there's a lot of sort of backstory to delve into in two regards really. First of all, this big concept of the space race or whatever it was called, the whole thing that Angstrong and Epso were part of, show us either those characters on earlier stages of the race or other characters as well, and some of the obstacles they faced on the other planets. It'd be really cool to see some more of Art Malik as Elin as well, sort of guy in charge of that big race thing, because he brought a lot to that character in the very sort of brief moment we saw him on TV. So if they could find some way of bringing him back in audio, I think that would work really nicely. There's also the whole matter of the planet desolation, of what happened to it in the past in terms of the Stenza invading and the scientists they put to work there. That could reap some really interesting stories, I think. Next we have Rosa. I can't see them doing anything with this, to be honest, because it's a very sensitive sort of subject matter. You couldn't have a box set in 1950s Alabama or whatever. And with regards to Krasko, again, he was a one-hit wonder. I don't think anyone would be actually wanting to see him again, to be honest. Arachnids in the UK brings similar possibilities to The Woman Who Fell to Earth, so namely having characters like the Khans and Yaz's family, so her mum and her dad and her sister. Give us a bit more of them, have Yaz's dad investigating some conspiracies or something. I would have said Jack Robertson as well, but I don't think that's going to be happening now. The Tsuranga Conundrum again offers some interesting possibilities there. We could have more of Mabley, the nurse character there who helps the Doctor. We could have more of the pregnant dude, of Durkas, I think he was called, the engineer there, and his sister as well. I think she was called Eve. We could see more of her because she was like some massive decorated space pilot or something, so give us a bit more of that. And of course the Pating as well. Who doesn't want to see more of the Pating? How they would make that work on audio, I have no idea, but I'm sure they would find some way to do it. Demons of the Punjab, like Rosa, is a no-go, I think, really. They could do something more with the Thajarians, maybe, because they were like assassins at one time, so I guess we could see some of that, maybe, and what they got up to back in those days when they were assassinating people. Kerblam is like a pitch for a whole box set in itself. In a similar way we've had the Peladon box set recently, based around the Peladon stories from Classic Who. I think they could do loads of stuff with this and just go wild. They'd have to think of sort of different stories to tell and get around the slightly dodgy sort of ethical implications of what happened in the episode Kerblam. But there could be something to do with workers' rights, or like a revolution or something, or struggles between humans and robots working alongside each other. Similar to what they've done with the Robots, the series based on the Robots of Death from the classic series. The Witchfinders, like the historicals, I'm not quite sure what they could do there. I mean, they could bring back King James and give him like either his own spin-off series or have him guest in someone else's maybe. It Takes You Away is a really interesting one. I think there's a lot they could do there with the Solid Tract and the whole concept of parallel universes and all that sort of stuff. The Battle of Ranskoor of Kolos are not the most loved Doctor Who story ever, but there is a lot of potential there, I think, for spin-off stuff, you know, like with all the whole battle, for instance, that we didn't see take place on screen, all those ships and the wreckages and the ruins and stuff, you know, show us what happened there, show us what happened, you know, before Tim Shaw got his hands on the planet and the Yucks and stuff. And the Yucks would be really great to see again in some form or another. Similar thing could be said about Mark Addy's character, Paltraki. I mean, he wasn't the most developed character on screen, but you could definitely do more with him on audio. Resolution is a really interesting one as well. I think you could play around a lot more with the whole concept of the Recon Daleks and maybe show us other Recon Daleks that went to other planets across the universe. And we can add Mitch and Lynn to the list of characters to go into that Sheffield spin-off box set as well. And maybe Ryan's dad as well. Then we come on to Series 12 and Spyfall. So obviously, you know, we've got the big hitter here. We've got the Master in his own box set, the Spy Master in his own box set, Call Me Master. But is there anything else we could do? I mean, we could have more of the British government, maybe. We could have more of Ada Lovelace and Noor Yat Khan. Although again, you know, they're real life characters, so I'm not quite sure how much you could do with them. And also, I'm pretty sure in real life, Noor Yat Khan dies pretty soon after Spyfall Part 2 is set. So maybe not for her. I think the Kasavin could definitely come back in some form, but they were quite a visual monster on TV, so I'm not quite sure how they managed that in audio. And of course, Daniel Barton as well. We never got closure for that character or what he's up to, so that would be interesting to see, I guess. Orphan 55, and much like Kerblam, is basically a pitch for a box set in itself. I mean, you could maybe bring back some of the actual characters from this story, but I'm thinking more in terms of just playing around in that whole world and that whole era of the future and creating new characters and new scenarios there and playing around with ideas about, you know, these orphan planets and these tranquility spas and all this dark and dirty stuff going on there. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror is another funny one. You know, I don't think you could do a lot there. I mean, you could maybe have Nikola Tesla himself in it again in some form. I mean, maybe the Skithra could come back in some form. Anjali Mahindra, who played the Queen Skithra, has worked with Big Finish in the past, so that's not entirely beyond the realms of possibility. Fugitive of the Judoon, of course, you know, again, we have the big hitter here, the Fugitive Doctor box set at last. And I believe the first box set, at least, of Fugitive Doctor Adventures is actually going to be set after the events of this story. So we're not going to be delving earlier into her time stream, we're not going to be seeing characters like Lee, presumably. But of course, the option is there to do that in the future, maybe, and have earlier adventures, you know, with Lee and Carvanista and all these weird and wonderful characters. Praxeus is another one of those stories which has a lot of potential, I think, in terms of the guest characters there. I mean, that whole episode was basically like one massive setup for a spin-off involving Adam and Jake and the podcaster, I think we should call Gabriella or something like that. So yeah, I can totally see them, you know, having like a Three Idiots roaming box set or whatever at some point in the near future. Can You Hear Me has another couple of characters to add to the list for the Sheffield box set, and you could maybe do a bit more with the whole idea of these gods like Zelen and Rakaya and the other gods as well, and the whole sort of backstory of those two planets that were like at war with each other or whatever it was. The Haunting of Villa Diodati, like many of the other historicals I've discussed, I'm not quite sure what you could do there really. I mean, if we extend it into the Series 12 finale as well, there's definitely a lot more you could do with Ashad, telling his backstory, and just more generally as well, the whole story of the Cyber Wars. I mean, it's sort of been touched on in spin-off media and on TV at various points, but there is a lot more you could do there, I think. And the human survivors from the Series 12 finale could easily have their own spin-off, I guess, or maybe like be involved in someone else's spin-off as like a set of characters, set either before the events of that episode or afterwards when they end up on Earth in the present day, and we could just follow their lives and what they get up to then, what they sort of make of present day Earth. Revolution of the Daleks doesn't offer a whole lot. I mean, again, Jack Robertson is a character that I don't think is going to be touched for a very long time now, unfortunately. They could maybe do more with the Prime Minister from that story, before she gets exterminated. And then we move on to Flux, which is probably the most ripe sort of part of the current era for spin-off box sets and stories. I mean, basically every recurring character could have their own box sets. So Carvanista could definitely have one. Swarm Azure would be really interesting to see. In fact, all those 3 characters could be involved in either the upcoming Fugitive Doctor adventures or another box set further down the line. Professor Jericho could definitely have his own box set, either alongside Claire or maybe just with some other characters. And then of course there's a whole thing of Survivors of the Flux where he travelled to the Earth with Yaz and Dan for like 2 or 3 years. I mean, come on, there's like a whole season of box sets waiting to be made there. I mean, the Grand Serpent as well could maybe have his own set of stories, either set sort of before the events of Flux or maybe during his sort of slow takeover of Unit. Which brings us to the most recent 2 episodes, the 2 specials. So, Eve of the Daleks, you could maybe do something with Sarah and Nick there, maybe set like on their travels of the world or something. And then Legend of the Sea Devils doesn't offer a whole load of possibilities, I don't think, other than just bringing back the Sea Devils and having a new Sea Devil design sort of appear on cover artwork and stuff. But yes, that is my thoughts on the sort of spin-offs we could get from the Whittaker era. Of course, we could also get the 13th Doctor herself appearing in a range of audios in the not too distant future. And the same can be said for her companions, Yaz, Graham, Ian and Dan. They could appear alongside each other, or sort of in different combinations. I mean, I suppose out of all 4 of them, Mandip Gill and Tosin Cole are sort of the younger actors and sort of least experienced actors compared to, say, John Bishop and Bradley Walsh, who are always very in demand and very busy. So I guess it's more likely that we might see them first, maybe? But in terms of the concepts I have suggested, I think, if there are other box sets on the way, which it would seem there are, I think the most likely contenders are probably the Praxeus one, so 3 Idiots Roaming with 3 guest characters from that story, or maybe something Flux related. I mean, it would be very soon after Flux was broadcast to sort of start thinking about audio adventures, but then again, they did get their act together with Sacha Dhawan and Joe Martin, so I guess it can be done. But what do you think about all of this? What spin-offs from the 13th Doctor's era would you most like to see? Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Please do give this video a like if you have enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. And if you want to go one step further, feel free to check out my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye for now.